I'm Bracken Mosbacker. I work for Instructure. We make an open source learning management system. I'll explain what that is a little bit later, but it's for managing courses. It's pretty cool. It's called Canvas. I'm going to talk about hacking education today. But first of all, for those who are tired of all the drink ups, Salt Lake City has an awesome art scene, and this Friday, they do this every third Friday of the month. It's called SLC Art Gallery Stroll, and the art galleries are all open till 9, and it's really cool. There's a couple of my favorite ones on there. If anyone's interested, grab me, and I can do an art gallery tour of Salt Lake City with you if you're interested. It's pretty cool stuff. So during my talk, down the bottom right, there's the little shortened URL for links that I'll be talking about. So it's there the whole time, but if there's anything that intrigues you, you can follow that and get to the links of my talk. So that was buzzing. Talking about education, and why do you guys care about the education space? Number one, there's lots of VC money coming into education space the last few years. It's growing a lot. Like in 2010, there was 170 million VC money, if that's your thing. And there's lots of companies doing really cool things in this space. What gets me really excited is open educational resources. It's OER. I'll probably say OER a few times. For the nerds, it's a tricky space. You have data and it's represented somehow in this system, and you want to get it into this system, and you have to transform it, and and it's terrible and hard, but it's really cool because there's so much content out there that people just can't get to. It's amazing. You just can't access it in the way that's convenient for you. So I'll be talking about that a little bit in the talk. That if anyone wants to learn about it, just grab me and I can talk your ear off for an hour. Sorry for the few, I've already done that too. I already kind of said there's really cool things happening in education, like Khan Academy. No one stops talking about Khan Academy. MIT X, there's always been MIT OpenCourseware for a long time, but there's a new thing, MIT X, and it's actual courses that you progress through. There's the Stanford courses. I know a lot of people in the Ruby community were doing those last year. That's kind of spinned off to this thing called Coursera. In our community, there's lots of really cool stuff like Code Academy, Mendicant University. There's lots of really cool stuff that's happening in education space, and you should get excited about it because you guys could be part of it. Also, I think the Ruby community, I think every programming community is a learning community. We're here at a conference to learn, to network with each other. And when we do training in our companies, we do training online for free. We're a huge learning community. We don't think of ourselves like that, but we really are. And I think that's cool, and we can build that up and help each other share our learning content. This is just a diagram. You don't really have to parse all this if you don't want to. It's kind of showing what the current status of education kind of in the United States, somewhat globally, is like right now. There's so many different areas. I mean, if you're interested in education, our company is mostly in traditional nonprofit, but just traditional higher education in K-12. But there's so much stuff that can be done in massive online courses and just in our little communities. Most of the Ruby stuff in our community is self-paced stuff over here on the right, and people just put it out there and people can learn from it, and it's really interesting. So whatever interests you, you can find an area that's cool and work on that area. So I kind of think in our Ruby community, our learning platform is these conferences, our user groups. GitHub, I think that's our major learning platform. And that's way cool. But traditionally, the learning platforms at universities are called learning management systems. Many of you may know Blackboard. You may have used that in school. That's kind of the traditional learning management system, and we make one that's called Canvas LMS. It's an open source Rails app. Desire to Learn, Moodle's an open source PHP one, Sakai's an open source Java one. And that's kind of the platform of learning over the last 10 years in higher education. And they were pretty much walled gardens. Like you'd go in there, you'd build your course, and your course was stuck there. And just because every system's so different, and I think that's terrible. Because there's like lots of cool content sitting places you just can't get at. And then there's hundreds of small custom LMSs. Like Code School, Mendicant University has one, and they're like building another one. And that's really cool that there's all these little systems and people can customize it to themselves. But then again, the awesome content they're making kind of gets stuck in their little world. So even if like the content's free, if it's openly licensed, you still can't get at it. Like MIT OpenCourseWare is the great example of that. They have, thousands of pages of cool content on there, but it's like in PDFs, and it's in segments of courses and stuff like that. I mean, if you want to like build a course and like teach something, it's really hard to go find that and get at it. So even though it's there and you can use it all you want, it's really hard. Even for technologists who can try to automate things, it's just not easy. Like if I want to go to Khan Academy and say, I want to do this lesson, the YouTube videos are really easy to grab, but they actually have like quizzes and stuff that you can progress through, and they do all kinds of analytics on there. But if I'm like a teacher, I'm like, I want my student to go do this quiz here, but I want them to go do this other thing in the Stanford course, just a single lesson because I'm aggregating stuff. To do that, you have to like have your students create an account in all those places, and that kind of sucks, I think that's all I have to say about that. So that's kind of about content. The content is kind of in walled gardens. Even if it's open, you can browse there in your browser, you still can't get at it because of the format it's in, stuff like that. There's also tools, so not just the content, but like doing math tools, like what's the cool math tool that I can solve every problem? Mathematica, but I was thinking of a different Wolfram Alpha, like stuff like that, those are tools. And there's a lot of other stuff like that, it's not necessarily content, it's just tools. And a lot of those are like, for paid, a lot of them are open, but it's still hard to get your users in there, your students, or just like your peers, if you're making peer courses, in there to use that stuff. So like if you want to, traditionally if you have the big MLS and you have this MLS, Major League Soccer starts, RSL plays tomorrow, home game, so excited. If you have a traditional LMS and you build a tool and you want the teachers at that school or anyone that uses the LMS to use your tool, you have to get through the LMS company. You have to like build a custom plugin that works only for Blackboard or only for Canvas, and you have to get through all these things, and it's really hard to get people to use your tool, even if it's amazing. And it's really hard for schools to maintain, and it's just kind of, it's a bad situation. So it's hard to get people to use your tools. So you can't get content, you can't get tools easily. I already talked about creating accounts in multiple systems. So what I'm going to talk about is mostly about a way to help alleviate the tool problem between systems. It helps with OER, with the content stuff, I'll talk about that, but mostly it's a way to help with the tool system. It's called Learning Tools Interoperability. There's this huge standards body in the education space called IMS. They make mostly terrible standards. This one's pretty cool because it's super simple and allows kind of like a universal plugin system for the learning management space and the education space. At its core, all it is you post to a URL and it's OAuth signed with your key and secret that you set up with the tool provider. And all the major learning management systems support it. All the three big open source ones, the proprietary ones, they all support this. So you can build a tool that you launch into using this LTI, and anyone in the normal higher education system can use it. And lots of people in their own little custom apps are also becoming tool consumers. I'll talk about that some more in more detail. And so it's just really nice. You can build a tool and then everyone can use it. I'm mostly talking about tools. So some examples of what this is, it can free some learning content. Say you have a platform and you have a bunch of content in there, like you have something that represents a textbook, You can give someone a link that launches them into chapter 3, section 5 of that textbook, and whatever system they're normally using for learning, they just click that link and it kind of comes up in the system and they're looking at that specific concept, So, so you're not moving the content around, but people can get to your content. So it helps in that. I mean, it's not solving the content thing. Talk to me about that. Anyway, but for most cases, it's really used for small things. Like say you have a course and you have a course blog or multiple course blogs. You can have your students click on the link and it launches into the blog and they're logged in and they can make a blog post or edit a wiki. So if you have a course wiki, stuff like that. It's really cool. So I'm very excited about open content, but there's a lot of money to be made in this stuff too. Like we have a huge corporate client that does certification stuff, and they use our learning management system, but when they're going to take the certification test, they use this LTI standard and they launch into a test and they do their high stakes stuff, and it just sends a grade back so the teacher can still manage all that, but we don't care what the test is, we don't care what it looks like. They just have their own hardcore enterprisey system, So there's lots of tools like that you can build for universities. Textbook list, I talked about that. All the things. Everything can be an education tool. I'm just going to show a list. My coworker has just been finding random things and making LTI tools out of them. I'll show you specific examples in a minute, but where's my mouse? So TED Talks has a website, and they made it so you go in there, if you launch into this, you search for some talk, and then you can pull it into your course's content, these guys make little flashcards. You can say, I want flashcards in this, and it's just part of wherever your system is, it pulls it into there. So really simple things like that. Khan Academy, you can launch into specific areas of Khan Academy. This isn't supported officially by Khan Academy. We forked it and put the LTI code in there because it's cool. But so there's just any tools, and that's what makes it fun, is that you can do it with anything. Okay, so we have so many of these cool things, and it's really fun to add this functionality to tools you already have or tools you're just goofing off with. So I made a gem. It's called IMS-LTI, and it just helps take all the pain away. This is, it's just OAuth signing and sending XML back and forth, usual annoying stuff. But I try to take all the pain away, making a simple gem to do this. So now you can get a better concrete example of what I'm talking about. I'm going to show a quick demo of something that our community will think it's cool. So an example of a tool that our community has made Try Ruby. Someone else already mentioned something about that earlier today. Code Academy or Code School, I don't remember which one, uses that for the normal courses. So we have this tool called Try Ruby, and it has little lessons and stuff like that. And I'm maybe teaching an overview of programming languages course. So I want to send someone somewhere to do a Ruby thing, but my course isn't all Ruby, so I make an assignment, and I integrate this tool that's in another system. So this is running on a different server. I click this Try Ruby thing, it pulls up a Try Ruby tool, and you're in here, you can do Try Ruby. Try Ruby is really hard to get running, by the way. It took me forever. And so you can have your lessons here, and they progress through, and when they finish the lesson, it'll write a grade back to your system. So this one, to finish it, it says type the magic word to get your points. That's the, I need to. So I do this, and my Try Ruby tool recognizes they finished this lesson, whatever that is. We're going to tell the learning management system or the tool consumer, hey, they finished it, they get their grade. So your score has been updated. This user has a score for that now. So that's a really cool example that I think you guys anything you build can be useful for people in any kind of space. So let me go over the workflow of how this works. It's pretty simple. You have a tool consumer. That's your learning management system or whatever your tool consumer is. And all it is a post response that's OAuth signed to the tool provider. If you're not doing an assignment, that's the end of it. They're just sitting in your little tool and you can do whatever you want. If you send parameters that say, hey, I'm an assignment, the tool provider behind the scenes, OAuth signs another post request and sends it back to the tool consumer. Ignore that LIS services, that's like how they name it in there, but like you don't care. It's just going back to the tool consumer. So I mean, it's really simple and you can get so much functionality out of this. So this is the launch data, basically. So tool consumer can send all of this data. The ones in bold are the only ones that are required. So you can get all kinds of stuff depending on the settings of the tool consumer. So you can get like their name, what their role is, teacher, student, observer, moved. You can get their email address, you can get their profile picture, there can be all sorts of custom parameters. So whatever your tool needs to show them. If you're building these though, you shouldn't always count on their name and their email being there. Because if you're doing this with an official school, they're probably not going to want to send you their students' email addresses and stuff like that. So like try Ruby, it doesn't matter. You don't need that information. You're just like, oh, here's a user, you get some opaque identifier, and you can write a grade back. And they use it, they're happy, it's cool, you move on. So I'm just going to show you really quick again. So doing that same tool, I put this in here as a second assignment, and this one makes it so it wants to open in a new window. And I'm just going to inspect this and show you what the launch looks like. So this is just a form, and this has a bunch of those parameters I just showed you. Let me scroll to the top of this. So this is launching to some tool launch URL, and it has the launch presentation height so they can know context ID. So it's really just a form post with all that data in it. It's really simple. So, yeah. So this is how the gem works. So the gem doesn't help you manage your OAuth keys and secrets. That's outside the scope of the gem. I mean, the OAuth's its own thing, and you have to have that in your database. You set that up with the person beforehand. So you do that. I mean, OAuth is very common. There's lots of things to help you manage that already. But basically, the tool comes in. You say, oh, here's the key. What's the secret? And you set up this tool provider object up here. It's called provider. And then you say, is it a valid request? And you pass the actual request object that you got in your Rails app or your Sinatra app. And if it's not valid, I mean, you respond with a 401 authorization header stuff like you do for OAuth. So it makes it really easy to validate it. And then, so with OAuth, it uses OAuth 1, which has security problem with nonces and timestamps. Like, you have to make sure when you get a nonce that it's only been used with that specific timestamp once. You have to manage that, so the easiest way is you only accept timestamps that are within an hour period or something. So you just throw in your cache, I use this timestamp and this nonce in this hour, and then if it's in the cache, it's been used and we reject it. So that's just part of managing OAuth 1 apps. I have it in the link, there's a sample Sinatra app that's a tool provider that does all this, does the security stuff. It calls a method like verify the nonce isn't there. I mean, it depends on your caching system and stuff, but the example tool provider is pretty easy to follow, and it has all these examples. So once you have the provider object, you can get the username out of it, and then the main thing you need to know about this is you have the provider, and you want to know whether it's a launch for an assignment, so you're going to write a grade back, or if you're just launching your tool for them to go and play with. So the provider, I'm asking if it's an outcome service. That's the terminology of LTI. So you say, hey, provider, is this an outcome service? Is this for a grade? If so, then you launch whatever your thing is for a grade. And if it's not, you launch what it's not for a grade. It might be the same thing, and you just don't do the write back, but you can just ask the tool, and it checks all the correct parameters for you. Like, you saw there's 30 of those, but it makes it a little easier for you. And then so they do this, if it's a grade write back and they take some quiz, they do the try Ruby thing, and you evaluate them. You create your tool provider again, and you just say post replace result. Replace result's the verbiage from the standard again, and you just pass it the score. And the score is between 0 and 1. So you say like 1 means 100%, right? 0.5 means 50%. So you just do that, and it returns a result object, and you can ask if it was successful or if it wasn't. So that's the core functionality on these two slides. You get it, you validate that the request is valid, and then you show whatever it is you want to show, your try Ruby, and then you can write a grade back like this. Thanks. So, and then this is like all the LMSs have a thing like this to configure your tool. There's lots of options. It can be confusing. To make it easier, you can give them big nasty XML that they just like paste in there, or they just give a URL. Generating XML sucks. So for the library, you just set up a tool config object, and you just set like title, the launch URL, and any custom parameters or whatever, and you say 2XML, and it generates that big nasty XML for you. So you just give that to your users, and it makes it really easy for them to configure this. So talking to my coworkers, I was trying to find a cool app to demo. I'd said, who's made something cool in the last little while? And we have a lawyer coworker. And in law school, it seems kind of stupid to do this in law school, but he made a hot or not app. And so he got all the images of the people in like his class or something like that and did hot or not. And it was like a Sinatra app, and I said, hey, grab this tool, read the docs, and add it to it. So it's kind of a cool little test for me to see how well the library worked, and he just grabbed it, read the docs, and threw it together really easy. So as a good example, if you were a really bad teacher, you could add a hot or not app to your class, you know. It would really help you when like grades come up, you know, you can see just automatic, you know, A at the top, F at the bottom, you know. So it's just part of the class. It's cut off a little bit, see that hot or not. So this is the tool. You launch in there, and this is our instructor learning course, right? That's the name of my course, Learn LTI. So you go in here, and Whitmer's definitely hotter. And you're just in here. That's the lawyer. He's up there. He's a dirty lawyer. So it's a hot or not app. You know, it's just some stupid thing that he made, and he just added the gem to it, and bam, it's an education tool. So that's it. I mean, it was super easy for him to grab it and do it, and that's kind of the point I wanted to make, is that that you just grab anything, you know. Benji's amazing, if you don't know Benji. Brandon has a man crush on him, like, the last 10 years. It's kind of awkward. So that's it, you know. Hot or not's pretty cool. As a disclaimer, instructor does not tolerate hot or not in their classes or something stupid like that. I don't know. We don't want our clients to think we're writing that. Anyway, that was supposed to be a joke. Just pretend it was funny. So my goal in this is to get you guys to realize you can make really cool tools that formal education people can use really easy, and that we as a community can use to help each other interoperate with all the tools we make. Like Mendicant University, for example, has tons of really cool content, but it's kind of like stuck in their system. It's just a bunch of links of stuff, you know. It'd be really cool for me over like in code school, like creating some course to like, oh yeah, Mendicant already did something like this. I can send the user over there to do some thing, and it's in my code school course, you know, stuff like that. Or there's just so many possibilities. Like we make so much content to teach each other, and tools like Try Ruby that could be used in formal settings. Like there's so much cool stuff out there, and it's super easy to make it accessible to people who aren't even that technical. Like teachers, you say, here's a URL, you give it to your tool, it's configured, and now in your class you can use this cool textbook about something, you know. And I just think that's really cool. So this again is about the tools. There's still a huge content problem, is moving content between systems, and this helps that. Again, if you're even slightly interested in that, come talk to me. I have grand schemes of amazingness for moving content around. So make cool education tools because you can, and you already have made them, and that's it. Any questions?
So can you just kind of describe how it works with content that's behind a paywall?
Uh-huh. Yeah. So if like Code School is behind a paywall, they either like with, say they're at the University of Utah is using Code School. I don't think they do that kind of thing, but they're like, hey, Code School, we want to use your content in our courses. Code School says, here's the XML, and they can like configure that at the account level, and they say, here's the secret and key. Then teachers have this in their course, and they say, oh, I want to do a Code School thing. And since it's launched and it's signed with the correct key and secret, Code School is like, oh yeah, they're verified from the university, and then we show them the content they want to see.
And no Code School account would be needed, or how
It depends. I mean, because like the university would be like, okay, we're sending the email address with it. If they don't have an account, you guys create it in your system. We don't care. We don't want the user to have to go do that. Code School may do it. It might just be like a single lesson, like the Try Ruby case, where it's just like, Code School, allow our people to come in there, send grades back. You don't need to worry about who it is or anything like that. So it depends on how Code School want to do it. If they had lots of lessons and they wanted to like track other things, they'd probably make like a temporary user account or stuff like that. So I mean, it really depends. It's kind of endless possibilities there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess there's no solution for key accounts, right?
No, I mean, like they can send specific types of identifiers. Code School could say, oh, hey, send with it their Code School ID, and then the LMS or the system would try to send that with it. It would be depending on the system. I can try to explain better later. Okay. Any other questions? All right. Thanks.